So, what I think is, I don't want to speculate at all, but the highest likelihood for a lot of the fires, specifically Altadena, for example, from what I've seen thus far, is that it's a electrical malfunction on the power lines that are hitting one another and that are near brush.
Fires, they are still burning in Southern California. Still.
Did you already signal boost your video? The interview
We're
came
putting
out.
in the work.
Oh yeah, my video came out. It actually started off doing numbers and then it halted. I genuinely think YouTube halts my stuff. I swear to God, I have a feeling that YouTube suppresses my commentary or something happens. Maybe it gets like mass downvoted or something. I don't know what it is. Cause like
we're putting in the work.
Like it started off doing crazy numbers and then it immediately got suppressed. And I don't know what it is. It's been on the clip channel for days. No, it only got 34 downvotes. Wait, really? I don't even know how many downvotes it has. I don't know what the reason is. I don't know what the reasoning behind it is. It's just like interesting to see that the video that was doing fairly well just kind of stopped and kind of fell flat. I work as CDCR on the Cal Fire and Cal OS firefighting items. We currently have 939 inmates, 110 staff, comprising 68 crews at all incidents. Nice. What's in the can this morning? What do you mean? Just coffee. It doesn't have analytics yet for audience retention. You have 1.5 million on Twitter and I've never seen you post an original YouTube video on there. Yeah, I don't. Because, I mean, I promoted this video on my Instagram, but I didn't promote it on my Twitter. Our HasanAbi Gaming TikTok channel got suppressed. We were getting 50 to 100K TikToks consistently, and now we can't break 1 to 2K. Same content on YouTube Shorts are 1 out of 10. Yeah. Grab an espresso machine, my dude. It's time to upgrade. Okay, first of all, I have one already. But CNN breaking news. Hamas is expected to release 33 hostages during the first phase of an emergency ceasefire agreement, according to Israeli officials. Let's get to the wildfires first, and then we'll get to the ceasefire thing.
They're threatening to spread in Los Angeles County. We're seeing yet more images of heartbreaking destruction, and heartbreaking is a word here. Look at these pictures. We have now learned at least 24 people have died. They expect that number will go higher because several are still missing at this hour. Since it began, the fires have burned around 40,000 acres, scorching an area larger than the entire city of San Francisco. Take that in for a second. More evacuation alerts have now been issued for neighborhoods that had been spared until now, but we've got team coverage. We're going to begin again with Jonathan Vigliotti in Pacific Palisades. Jonathan, kudos to you. Good morning. What can you tell us?
And Gail, good morning to you. As you can imagine, so many people in a state of shock as they return back to scenes like this. The good news, the wind has calmed down over the weekend, giving fire crews a bit of the upper hand. But unfortunately, the National Weather Service once again issuing its most dire wind event warning with nearly identical conditions to what unfolded last week, creating all of this destruction. To put that in perspective, this is the equivalent of this area being hit by back-to-back hurricanes.
Crews are waging an all-out battle against the fires, attacking from both the ground and the sky for nearly a week. There are now about 5,000 fire personnel assigned to the Palisades fire alone.
Little fire tornado.
And with wind gusts up to 70 miles per hour expected this week, LA remains on high alert.
But with this next wind event, got to stay informed. Follow all evacuation warnings and orders. And the key here is without delay.
Authorities warn that the entire region is at risk. Millions have their bags packed as their fellow Angelenos cope with what's already been lost.
Hey, Jeff.
What?
There's the TV. Devastating. It's devastating and numbing. I didn't grab anything because I didn't expect it to be this bad.
Firefighters have been pre-treating perimeters with retardant to buy critical time for when high winds ground aerial teams.
Loving to see
Firefighters
Cali
from around the
burning.
U.S. as well as Mexico and Canada are on the ground. And on Sunday, Governor Gavin Newsom announced an additional 1,000 National Guard troops to the 1,500 already deployed.
Good morning, everyone.
Mayor Karen Bass, who's facing scrutiny over the firefighting budget and traveling last week overseas amid the fire warnings, brushed off the criticism.
Oh, we need to continue to act in a unified manner. Those people that are affected by the fires, we give all of our possible support to.
Bass confirmed President-elect Trump has been invited and said she doesn't expect any animosity, despite his attacking Bass and Newsom online. An estimated 75% of the Pacific Palisades is now completely gone. Many are searching for answers while reality sinks in.
It's still heartbreaking, even if your house is there, to know that what I always thought was one of the most beautiful neighborhoods in Los Angeles.
Someone in the chat said, what happened to the Palestine flag? New Twitch policy. No, not every single thing is a conspiracy, okay? It fell. That's it. Good moment to just like take a deep breath and think maybe not everything has to be a conspiracy.
It's just gone.
And the threat continues tomorrow morning. Wind gusts exceeding 70 miles per hour. Officials saying they're going to preemptively cut power in some neighborhoods to prevent sparks from starting from down power lines. And in fact, there is an investigation into whether a power conductor sparked at least one of these fires, Tony.
That's often what it is. Jonathan, thank you very much. Appreciate your great work out there.
So what I think is, I don't want to speculate at all, but the highest likelihood for a lot of the fires, specifically Altadena, for example, from what I've seen thus far, is that it's a electrical malfunction on the power lines that are hitting one another and that are near brush. And the other one specifically for the Palisades one, what we have seen so far is like it was near a trail into Panga Canyon, if I'm not mistaken. And I feel like that the likely culprit there could potentially be like, I don't know, someone smoking weed or something, like a cigarette butt or so we'll see. I mean, this is, again, all speculative. Fool, weed goes out too quick, or a cigarette or something like that. What caused the Palisades blade? Visual evidence points to a recent fire nearby. The New Year's Eve fireworks start the largest Los Angeles fire. Or if it's not a cigarette bud, it could have been a fallen ember from a nearby fire or something, considering how the winds were carrying carrying embers miles away, pretty much. The foot of the fire started real close to where the last fire was on New Year's Eve, said a Los Angeles County firefighter. According to a Washington Post review of the archive radio transmissions, it looks like it's going to make a good run, one chimed into the dispatch. The Post analysis of photos, videos, satellite imagery on radio communications, as well as interviews with witnesses, offers new evidence that the Palisades fire started in the area where firefighters had spent hours using helicopters to knock down a blaze 6 days earlier. Investigators from the state and federal agencies descended on this area in recent days, interviewing residents and looking for evidence, including around the burn scar of the New Year's Eve fire of what sparked the blaze. Post analysis showed that the new fire started in the vicinity of the old fire, raising the possibility that the New Year's Eve fire was reignited, which can occur in windy conditions. Residents also told the Post and investigators on scene that firefighters' response Tuesday was much slower than on New Year's Eve, a view confirmed by radio transmissions. From Colorado to California to Hawaii, flare-ups of previous fires, known as reignition, have been the cause of some of the nation's most catastrophic and deadly wildfires. This past summer, California officials coordinated a social media campaign to warn residents that terrain scorched but seemingly extinguished can spawn deadly new fires for weeks after the old ones appear to have gone out, as the fire can smolder almost undetected underground or inside wood. Despite that and warnings of an intense and dangerous wind event last week, a Los Angeles Fire Department spokesman told the Post on Friday that it was not the department's practice to maintain patrols of past fire sites, even for a few days after the fires have gone cold. We know that fires rekindle and transition from smoldering to flaming, said Michael Gollner, a professor of mechanical engineer and fire scientist at the University of California, Berkeley. It's certainly possible that something from that previous fire within a week had rekindled and caused the ignition. Investigators are only beginning to hunt for the cause of the Palisades fire, the first and largest of what became a terrifying days-long series of firestorms that would touch nearly every corner of the sprawling Los Angeles region. After a Sunday lull in the winds, the death toll citywide was still rising with 24 dead and more than 12,000 homes and structures have burned. Higher fire risk was expected to return Monday through Wednesday, with speculation ranging from downed power equipment to arson. Identifying the origins of fires will have huge and possibly expensive implications for the state and how it manages growing wildfire risks. The Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives is taking the lead on the investigation, officials said. In a statement, the ATF spokesperson said, ATF certified Fire investigators did an initial survey of the area, but the investigation has not begun. Not an expert, but I feel like this is why they weren't letting vehicles into burned areas in that vid the other day. No, there are multiple different reasons for why vehicles are not let into areas that are burning. Number one, it's to ensure that civilians don't get in the way of emergency services and create additional problems for emergency services, because you can go from someone who wants to go through the burning ashes of your house to a victim like that, which causes additional strain on the already limited resources in a time of crisis. The second reason is because you also, could inhale toxic fumes and get in the way. But last but not least, your car, if you ditch it in the middle of the road, is now an additional hurdle that the emergency service has to clear. There are many different reasons as to why they stop people from going into those areas. It's not, but first and foremost, the priority is safety. Ironically enough, I think that the media does a disservice when they cover the National Guard or the police being deployed into these areas as a way to combat looters. They're actually doing a disservice to the public, because the real reason as to why police and National Guard are deployed in times of need in areas like this are not to actually stop looting from happening. It's literally to stop people from going into these unsafe neighborhoods. That is the primary reason. And it's very frustrating to see everyone constantly alarmed and in a panicked, constantly alarmed and panicked by the crazy looting narratives. These bandits are trying to do everything they can to steal your valuable possessions that have been turned into dust and ash. Anyway, from the start of the fire Tuesday, authorities have known that the smoke began in a stretch of the Temescal Ridge in the Santa Monica Mountains, where the earlier fire believed by residents to have been sparked by firewoods occurred. The Post identified the burn scar of the New Year's Eve fire using false color satellite imagery taken before and after the blaze. The technique tracks changes the vegetation in satellite imagery. Healthy plant cover appears red, while scorched ground appears blue to brown. In addition, satellite imagery taken on Tuesday at 10:45 a.m., about 20 minutes after videos show the Palisades fire began, indicates that the origin of the smoke overlapped with a burn scar from the New Year's Eve fire. Smoke extends in the direction of the wind to the south, away from the previously burned area. The question of what caused the fire has weighed on the minds of many who have lost their homes, while also fueling conspiracy theories online, of course. Residents and business owners are considering lawsuits seeking who might be to blame for the damages and economic losses that Wells Fargo estimates could range from $60 billion to $130 billion. Investigators from local, state, and federal agencies have been combing the site of the fire, speaking with people who stayed behind. But it will take a long time to determine it. There is some additional new evidence, I would say, that shows the there's some additional new evidence that shows the potential.
And that is good,
shows where it came from, right? But that doesn't mean that we have 100% certainty on how these fires started, and there's still always going to be rampant speculations that run wild. And for that reason, it's important to just take a deep breath and wait for these investigations to be concluded, rather than leaning into whatever conspiracy theories that correspond to your personal biases, if that makes sense. Is that all right? All right. Firefighters continue to battle blazes in Southern California.
But this map shows where all the fires are burning across Los Angeles. The two big ones, they are still the Palisades fire and the Eaton fire. Firefighters are battling the flames from the air as they try to contain as much as possible before the wind kicks up again.
Yeah, there is concern now about the return of the Santa Ana winds as the search for the missing intensifies and the death.
Yeah, this is what's actually really scary. The Santa Ana winds are going to increase in intensity, according to people, according to the weather people that have talked about this. Tomorrow night, leading into I believe like Wednesday morning, if I'm not mistaken, or is it tonight, leading into Tuesday morning? This is initially what caused the wildfires to get completely out of control. Hopefully, because of the fact that these wildfires have been ravaging California for the past week, there are so many extra hands this time around, including, you know, we talked about the MAFS system that they have. Like the American military is involved in it. You have Mexican wildfire fighters. You have firefighters from all around in nearby states that have come down. So hopefully they'll be able to tackle it a little bit better. But the unfortunate reality is if wind conditions get to 80 to 100 miles, it severely limits tackling these wildfires. That's something to always consider. Please make an emergency go back. Chatter, if you think I don't have an emergency go back at this point, I don't know what to tell you. Of course, NOAA red flag through January 15th, 12 p.m. I'm like, yeah, I've had a go bag already prepared, ready to go for some time now.
That toll has risen to 24 people. The head of a major private power company will join us live. His company is facing questions about its electrical equipment, possibly sparking some of the fires. We have team coverage all over the fire zones. Ginger is standing by with a red flag warning from the National Weather Service that is expected to last until Wednesday. And we start with Chief National Correspondent Matt Gutman in Pacific Palisades. Good morning, Matt.
Hey, good morning, George. More than 8 million people in LA County are facing this critical fire risk today. The National Weather Service giving it that rare designation.
What's an emergency go bag? You just need to have like food, a change of clothes, water, and your emergency items like that you can't lose in a fire, you know? Okay.
A particularly dangerous situation, same as it was last week. And, you know, the firefighters who've been on the line here for a week are already exhausted, like the folks here at Fire Station 69 getting a little bit of shut-eye right now because they have been getting massive amounts of reinforcements in terms of personnel and equipment.
This morning, exhausted fire crews trying to snuff out remaining hot.
Does Kaya have an emergency go bag? No. Kaya. Hi, Kaya. Place. Get your fat ass back on that bed. Kaya is the go bag. I want to train her to basically be able to carry equipment so bad because I think she would be so cool. What would you feed her? Yeah, I have dog food, chat. What are you talking about? Like, that's also a part of the go bag. Yeah, I want to use her as a pack mule. I think she could do a great job at it. What are you looking at, huh? Good girl. Good lady. Sleepy baby. Stop calling Kaya fat while also making her lay down for 8 hours while you yap. First of all, Kaya gets more workout than 90% of chatters in here, okay? Kaya works out more than most of you. She's in remarkable shape. That's why I got her a tummy tuck, because I was worried she was getting a little fat.
Spots as officials are bracing for those Santa Ana wind gusts today, expected to reach 70 miles an hour.
Go, go, go.
Over the weekend, the Palisades fire again flaring up, this time near Mandeville Canyon, the fire encroaching on Brentwood and Encino, triggering an unprecedented air assault. The largest blaze, the Palisades fire, scorching nearly 24,000 acres with only 13% containment. And that fire spinning up a firenado. And reinforcements pouring in for both Mexico and Canada, deploying fire crews and equipment, specifically those large air tankers. But FEMA saying there are limits to that air support.
We're also talking about a very small space from the air, and we got to make sure that those aircraft are safe. They can only put so much in the air at that one time.
This is authorities in LA County are now investigating the possible causes of the fire.
Hey, babe, I need you to come out here right now. We have a very big problem.
What? Doorbell camera and cell phone video from Jeffrey and Cheryl Koo showing the frantic moments when they say they saw this small fire near their Altadena house at around 6:19 p.m. Tuesday.
Oh. At that time, that when we saw it, it was just at the base of the tower. And within minutes, it had spread.
The Koos racing outside, filming what they saw in those terrifying moments. And look closely, beyond the tree line, that's a transmission tower.
What did it feel like?
It was a nightmare. And I think the worst part was every time I checked on the fire, it got worse.
And minute by minute, they watched the fire grow. Nearby, Jennifer Errico says she saw what appears to be fire at the base of that same transmission tower at about 6:20 p.m., snapping this picture.
My husband had come home from work and he ran in the house and just started screaming, "There's a fire on the hill. We need to
lawsuit incoming, it seems.
Get out." I ran out back, saw the fire at the holes. I immediately called 911.
The winds quickly stoking the fire into an inferno, turning the night sky orange. And at 6:24 p.m., a third resident, Pedro Rojas, taking video of the flames near that electrical tower.
That was the only flames you saw anywhere around?
Anywhere around. There were no other fire, no flames anywhere around because it was so dark that if there were some flames in other places.
Edison International, who owns SoCal Edison, did $200 million in stock buybacks over the summer. Excuse me. They were maxing out shareholder value. They're allowed to do that. And they have a fiduciary responsibility to do that. Do they have a responsibility to protect people that they're serving? No. Hello? That's hard work. Do you understand how hard it is to do stock buybacks? You don't. Stock buybacks hit a lot harder when you don't got a bitch in your ear telling you how insane it is that you're not using that money to harden your infrastructure. Okay? Yeah. This chatter is just mad that there were no other possible investments that could have improved utility. That's called Econ 101. You have to do stock buybacks. Duh. Thank you, Central Committee. Someone who understands fiduciary responsibility, okay? Someone who gets it. I read this in a book, okay? What's next? We're going to talk about widgets of the widget factory. Corporations do not have a fiduciary responsibility to do every single thing possible at the expense of everyone and everything. That's a misconception that corporations use to excuse their behavior. Excuse me. It actually suits my purposes as a rich guy who's a shareholder, okay? So I will continue saying that they have a fiduciary responsibility. They're legally bound to constantly cut corners, okay? To constantly seek out profit and increase shareholder value. What a wonderful system we have in place. Nobody, and I mean nobody, is thinking about the shareholders. Why is nobody thinking about the shareholders? Ugh.
We have noticed it.
On Sunday, we traveled to that Altadena neighborhood to get a closer look.
So Eaton Canyon is below me, and right there is that transmission tower that the crews say they saw the fire burning initially. It may be one of several, or the first place where the fire started, but that's the tower, at least in the video.
Fire officials telling ABC News they are aware of the videos and that they are part of the investigation. Southern California Edison says while the Eaton fire started in its service area, a preliminary analysis shows no interruptions or electrical or operational anomalies until more than an hour after the reported start.
A prime example of this working out splendidly is Boeing. Yes, sure, a couple planes, experience significant failures, okay? But you know how well the shareholders are making out. Now, of course, one might also point out the reality that, the stock prices have taken major hits as a consequence of these ginormous issues, these ginormous failures that are in broad daylight, very, very public, especially considering that when your commercial airline ends up having a failure such as that one, you kill like around 100 to 200 people in one go, okay? But that's simply a tiny setback, okay? Especially considering that the American government will always have Boeing's back and will always use taxpayer-funded subsidies to make sure that Boeing can land on the right track. We're always good to go.
Time of the fire. The company also says no fire agency has suggested that its equipment caused the Eaton fire to ignite.
Now, 24 people lost their lives in this fire, and ABC News has learned that the ATF, the federal agency tasked with examining and investigating explosives and arson, is going to take the lead in investigating the Palisades fire. And arson is one of the factors that they are going to investigate. That is, Governor Gavin Newsom here has demanded an independent investigation into the water issue, specifically here in the Palisades fire hydrants running dry. He called it deeply disturbing, George.
Okay, Matt, questions about power companies as well. And the head of the private power company, Edison International, is going to join us live in our next half hour. The latest developments on the wildfires in California. High winds are picking up again. Want to go to Matt Rivers.
Can't help but be reminded of the power centers being riddled with gunfire. What if it's the same group? What are you talking about? These aren't power centers. These are power lines. It is so sound considering Boeing's ethos was literally the opposite. It was known as the aerospace company led by engineers instead of businessmen. Yeah.
In Altadena. Good morning, Matt.
Hey, good morning, George. Yeah, law enforcement, fire officials have the horrific task of now having to perform grid searches to see if they can find human remains as people remain missing. Not only in homes across Altadena that have burned, but also in businesses like this one. This was a grocery store. This is the kind of place also that firefighters will have to go through this as we are expecting those winds to pick back up. As the death toll rises this morning, the search for the missing amidst the devastation intensifying.
Our Los Angeles County Fire Department using cadaver dogs doing grid searches. I don't expect good news from those.
The death toll now at least 24. Among the casualties, Altadena residents Victor Shaw, Anthony Mitchell, and his son Justin Mitchell, and 84-year-old Charles Mortimer. Officials urging some residents to resist going back home.
A lot of these areas still look like they were hit by a bomb. There are live electrical wires, gas lines, and other hazards.
Many just looking for answers, like Ron McCord, who'd fled the Eaton fire without knowing if his house was okay.
We talked to the police. They said nobody's going through. We saw you guys, and we thought, oh my gosh, maybe they can help.
Unable to pass through police checkpoints, he asked us to go check for him.
Yeah, it's totally, this is their house. They told us there were stones in front. There was a street sign in front. This is 100% it. And by the looks of it, it's totally gone. There's the remains of a garage in the back there, but the house part here, and they told me they had stone steps in the front. It's totally gone.
So we walked back down and showed Ron what happened, recording with his permission.
This house has survived 110 years.
What's going through your mind as you see this?
It's just my worst fears are confirmed, and it's just sadness.
Ron's story repeated thousands of times over amidst an avalanche of tragedy here. But this morning, there is good news, too.
I looked to my side, and the dog was seated with its tail between its legs, just curled in the corner of the front yard.
Firefighter Slater Lee from San Marcos, California, fighting the flames, holding a fire hose in one hand while at the same time comforting the stranded dog with the other and getting him safely out of the burning neighborhood.
I was able to scratch his head there for a little bit, and it was a special moment, something that I'll...
And Lee stressed to us that he is just a part of a team. It was a team effort, not something solo. As soon as we were done talking to him, he actually had to go back out to the front lines on yet another 24-hour shift. Robin?
They have been so relentless in fighting this. Matt, thank you.
We're going to turn now to the hard-hit Altadena area, where officials say the fires have damaged or destroyed at least 7,000 structures, including many, many family homes. Elise Preston is there, and she, like so many people, discovered a personal connection to the devastation. Elise, good morning.
Tony, good morning to you. Nearby crews are working to contain the Eaton fire before winds pick back up again. But for residents, frustrations are rising. Many say they are unable to return home, and those who are often find nothing. That includes my distant relatives, whom I hadn't met, but was heartbroken after learning that they had lost.
That's crazy. Using newscaster speak when talking about distant relatives is wild.
Just about everything. As firefighters made progress controlling the deadly flames over the weekend, residents hoping to return to their homes or see the devastated remains became frustrated as they were turned away at checkpoints.
It's what we're all in line for, to just be able to get some of our personal things because we're so afraid that it could go.
Officials say the blockades are for potentially deadly hazards and to keep criminals out. The LA County Sheriff's Department posting this image on social media of a suspect wearing a firefighter's jacket arrested for burglary.
Eager to prosecute anybody who is taking advantage of our residents during this very difficult time.
But those who have made it home often find only smoldering remains. One of those families.
Hi, cousin.
Hi there. How are you?
I'm
Nice
well.
to meet you.
I'm so sorry.
Oh.
Turned out to be my distant cousins.
We keep saying we had to brace ourselves. We got to brace ourselves. Yeah.
We went with Michael and Felita Keeling to see the charred ruins of the Altadena home they bought 25 years ago.
It actually is worse than I thought.
It's worse than you thought?
Well, because I guess from the pictures, I thought maybe like a wall would have collapsed and maybe something would have been still existing, but it's not here.
When the Eaton fire erupted last week, their sons Miles and Preston packed what they could and evacuated the only home they've ever known. They managed to grab a photo album spanning generations of our shared family history.
What does it mean that it was saved? This is the thing that was saved.
Well, I mean, this is what's important. This is the family. This is the thing that's valuable.
Now, my relatives say thankfully they have insurance and plan to rebuild here in Altadena.
Wall Street Journal's coverage. Why did I survive? Altadena residents return home amid LA fires.
It's just so sad to see it all gone.
Using your distant cousins you've never met for a news hit is absolutely insane. I can't stand mainstream news. I just don't understand why you had to mention that you had never talked to them. Isn't it better overall just to say that they're your distant relatives? Or to say that they're, to treat them as though you would treat any interview subject. I feel like specifying that they're distant relatives that you haven't talked to ever in your life makes it seem weird. Just say that they're your relatives. Woke of the day. No, I just don't understand. Like, it almost comes across as like you're using them for the segment, which is perfectly valid to do. That is the job of a journalist, for the record. Like, yeah, your job there as a journalist is to showcase the humanity, the victims, and what they're going through. It makes sense. They do that with random people as well. They do that with plenty of random people that they do not know personally or are related to. Okay? I just don't know why. I don't know why she had to put that in there.
This is the neighborhood of Altadena. This is a middle-class, historically black neighborhood. And all around here is just an immense amount of destruction. So many of these houses, all that is left are just the chimneys. Most people aren't able to come back in here because the police, the National Guard have set up checkpoints, but there's still a trickle of people coming in to see the remnants of their homes. And it's really not clear as to what happens next here.
Okay, so you want to take some of your mementos?
This is my mug. It's cracked.
What is it?
No, we're good.
Okay. Yeah, we looked around, so all we found was the skillets, and that's just...
Yeah, yeah.
Last Tuesday night, Ellen Soul was at home with no power. When she went outside and looked up towards the mountains.
This is behind my house.
Within minutes, she fled. This is her first time back.
I bought this house for myself and my dog, and it has housed me for 16 years. And I was so proud of myself because I did it all by myself. I don't know where I'm going after this. I don't know what I'm doing because this is going to take a while for them to clean this up. I just want to find closure. I won't come back up here again. I won't come up. Okay.
When people fled, they left nearly everything behind, including their cars. Manuel Almanza is a locksmith, going around fitting new keys for the cars that survived.
I need to get something for my truck. Customers call me and say, I don't have any money. I say, it's okay, don't worry about it. It's good to help each other, Probably the business is going back, but probably it's not going to be the same. Maybe it's going to take years.
That's awesome that he's doing this. That's dope.
And I feel sad, really. I feel sad. There's nothing I can do,
What a G.
Yeah, I don't know. It's really messed up here. Yeah.
Some were lucky enough to save their houses. We met Douglas Rogers and his wife Myron as they were leaving their house carrying what they could after stopping the fire with jacuzzi water.
So I'm in my backyard. Before my backyard caught on fire, this is what was going on. It's my neighbor's house, that's across the street, all that smoke. I have an above ground spa, so I just took some buckets that I had lying around from Home Depot, and yeah, so I'm carrying buckets up the street to my neighbor's house next to us to put those fires out. And saved theirs, which saved ours, which saved the next. And people don't realize they see the flames, the smoke, and they imagine the heat, but the sounds that you hear, gas lines hissing and tanks exploding.
Being home is not going to be home because you're looking at all this. There's nothing else around. It's like, you know, why me? Why did I survive? And then you're among all this destruction by yourself.
The story will continue in a moment.
This is hard to watch, but I think this is infinitely better coverage of this story than the 700 news hits we heard about Paris Hilton's house burning down or whatever celebrity's house burning down in Malibu. That's also tragic because you know, celebrities are still, like, wealthy people are still human beings, and they're losing access to, you know, things that they cherish their possessions that they cherish from their loved ones and whatnot. Okay. But this is a far more consequential impact for a lot of normal people that are simply, you know, like a high school football coach or middle-class individuals losing their houses that, you know, they've lived in for generations. You know what I mean? The reality of the matter is, like, these are the people who are, they're going to have a much harder time with insurance companies. They're going to have a much harder time with, like, predatory capital coming in to try to purchase these lots as cheaply as they possibly can. They're going to have a hard time relocating in the process as they try to rebuild their homes. Like, even in an instance where, even during, like, climate crisis, I think what you are watching unfold in front of your eyes is what is going to happen more and more frequently, where wealthy people will always have a way to mitigate the worst aspects of this disaster, especially in terms of recovery and rebuilding. Because a lot of wealthy people also have the capacity to just, like, purchase new things and wait and move to their second home, third home. You know what I mean? And this extends not just to wildfires, but any kind of anthropogenic climate change caused natural disasters, right?
Flare up.
Ooh, Americans are the refugees for once, except they have money to use. They have hotels to go to. They have FEMA payouts. They have insurance payouts. They have healthcare. They have legal protections. It's so funny to say they have healthcare and that they have insurance payouts. How is someone like me who was born in America but will never be able to afford land or a house or raise my kids here supposed to feel about all that being taken from the people who are directly responsible for my not having those things? Yeah, you're right. The high school gym teacher in Altadena is responsible for you not having any of those things. You're right. The high school football coach, they voted for slavery. Dude, you are so brain dead. Wow. Look, I have a lot of charity for people that sometimes have a somewhat reactionary approach to victims of natural disaster because of their own conditions being horrible. Okay? But redirecting your anger to people who are identical to you, like virtually identical to you in their class position, is the most insane thing. Okay? We're not even looking at, like, Mel Gibson's 8th house being burned down. You know what I mean? What about North Carolina? No one gives a fuck about them. That's also insane. Imagine if I said, well, North Carolina has a lot of right-wingers who voted for Donald Trump, so they deserve to be destroyed by climate change. Yeah, that would be insane. Okay? That would be insane. That would be ruthless and cruel. Not what I said at all, man. That's not true. I mean, you're doing this. You're doing this right now, okay? And even I, who has an endless amount of charity for people who feel completely screwed over by the systems and therefore have sometimes a reactionary approach to this kind of thing is telling you, you're recognizing that it's bad when people actually don't care about some victims of natural disasters. This is not one of those communities, obviously, while simultaneously exhibiting that same bad behavior that you recognize as bad for other victims of a natural disaster. I just don't give a fuck about Paris Hilton. I'm not talking about mom and pop shops and shit. No, but you're talking about that when there's a 60-minute coverage that is specifically not talking about Paris Hilton, but specifically featuring a historically black neighborhood, Altadena, okay, where middle-class people live in their generational homes that their grandparents bought when it was infinitely more reasonable. You brought up Paris Hilton. Yeah, I brought up Paris Hilton to specifically say this kind of coverage is infinitely better than Paris Hilton. That's what I said. I was saying this kind of coverage showing victims of this natural disaster that are infinitely closer to, you know, every other person living in the rest of this nation. And you still chose to, I guess, misunderstand my position, or maybe you feel a little bit embarrassed about what you said and you're trying to do a little bit of ass covering. It's okay. It's all right. You know what I mean? No, stop telling him to take the L or whatever. That's annoying. This is the other side of the story that is also valid, which is that when fires are this massive, this expansive, and happening in real time in like three completely separate places, it also becomes virtually impossible. Like, even if you have the best mitigation methods, even if you have the best, even if you have the maximum amount of fire engines and fire hydrants, like, it becomes physically impossible when you have 100-mile winds carrying embers everywhere. Okay, like that's the other issue here, and there's truth to that as well. You can limit it to the best of your ability. And I don't think it's appropriate to just like go, oh, there's no way to prevent this at all, right? And there are certainly issues with the lack of funding that we've talked about extensively. But the reality of the matter is, this is not unexpected, but unprecedented for a reason. Concerned about right now is the fact that Gavin Newsom has said that they will not have like pesky environmental regulations get in the way of rebuilding fast. And I feel like that is going to make the problem worse down the line. And I am genuinely fearful of this. While I understand that rebuilding fast is very important, I think this is the moment where you're supposed to take extra care and consideration over those environmental regulations and try to make sure that everything that is being rebuilt is hardened so that you don't actually have this exact same issue a couple years down the line. That's what's so crazy about this entire process that I can't comprehend. Like, people are talking about like cutting red tape in an effort to rebuild as fast as possible. And I'm sure that that's what's inevitably going to happen. But the lack of appropriate regulation and implementation of safety measures ahead of this wildfire is the reason why the wildfire damaged and destroyed 12,000 structures in the state of California so far. So I don't know. Because on the one hand, I understand the necessity for rebuilding fast. I mean, people lost their homes. They want to build as quickly as possible, and they want to go back to their homes as quickly as possible and return to normalcy as quickly as possible. There's going to be aftershocks of this in the housing market, and it's already started. You have landlords and massive real estate owners using this opportunity to engage in illegal price gouging, increasing the price points of single-family homes by upwards of 100%. Like, totally illegal, by the way. And I think a smart prosecutor would make short work of people that are trying to engage in this sort of thing, and could potentially even maintain a lot of charity. This would be good politically. You know what I mean? This would reinstill faith in the criminal justice system in the eyes of many people. Are you worried about your property? Not necessarily, but, you know, like I said, the way I think about it is if the fire got to where I am at, that would mean millions displaced at that point. Millions. Crazy how they called it. I think a lot of the money, considering the damage is like upwards of $130 billion, according to Wells Fargo estimates, a lot of the money is going to be spent on rebuilding and rebuilding fast. But I think extra money should be spent on hardening the infrastructure, putting these goddamn power lines underneath. Okay? I just don't know how we can sit around and watch these kinds of wildfires occur over and over again in this state and not do something about the infrastructure spending. And if people don't actually do that, if our government doesn't actually do that, this is just going to keep happening over and over again. Although some of the massively consequential wildfires might have started, like the Palisades one, might have started as a consequence of reignition potentially, according to the Washington Post article that we read. There are others that definitely did start due to, and there are plenty of historic examples of wildfires starting due to not moving our power lines underground because it's far too costly for the utility companies. Yeah, Bernie's federal firefight expansion cost only $19 billion. If you want an idea of just how much not doing the Green New Deal was a disaster, exactly. It actually is truly frustrating to watch this happen in my state when it just seemingly happens consistently over and over again. And virtually no one wants to spend that upfront money because all the tax breaks that we offer the utilities companies, all the subsidies that we give to the utility companies go back to stock buybacks rather than going into infrastructure hardening. And this is a age-old phenomena that keeps reoccurring over and over again. One example that comes to mind is something as simple as like ISPs getting billions of dollars in the 90s. Billions of dollars of tax breaks in the 90s, specifically to improve bandwidth, expand it, improve it, and offer better services, and then never doing it for 4 decades, refusing to do it for 4 decades. And if you don't actually have the regulatory agencies come back and pounce on these major providers, whether it be ISPs or utilities, and demand that they actually follow through on the tax benefits that they were given, okay, then why would they? $200 billion, yeah. The 1996 Telecommunications Act basically paid for fiber across the majority of the U.S., and they took the dollars and ran. Yep. So many of the problems that we talk about on a day-to-day basis on this broadcast have solutions that require competent governance, a mechanism of enforcement. Those mechanisms exist. We just never use them. We never utilize them against these major corporations. The government is completely servile to corporate interests. So it's basically used as a way to funnel tax dollars directly back to these corporations and never in a million years enforce the appropriate regulatory pushback that's necessary to make these companies by force do what benefits public interest. And I know for a fact Trump is not going to do anything about it, especially as the Republican Party is currently talking about potentially placing conditions on aid to California. That's right. No conditions. These animals would condition aid to fellow American victims of natural disaster, but never to a foreign ally committing genocide. Monstrous cretins. No conditions to Israel, but conditions to fellow Californians who are suffering from this natural disaster.
Are you open to providing aid to California without any conditions at all?
we've got to have a serious conversation about that. Obviously, there's been water resource mismanagement, forest.
They're like, yeah, we'll give you conditions as long as, you know, you open up as long as you dam the rivers, redirect water, continue polluting the environment, help out some of our big donors in the agribusiness, and ruin the environment further, accelerating the conditions in which climate change gets worse and worse, which then cause these once-in-a-lifetime natural disasters to happen over and over again. What do they mean by conditions? I mean, one can only speculate at this point what those conditions are. One can only speculate what those conditions are, but it seems like the fact that he's talking about something that Donald Trump has talked about, the Sacramento Delta being redirected into Southern California specifically for agribusiness, seems like that's the condition that they want to implement.
Management, mistakes, all sorts of problems. And it does come down to leadership, and it appears to us that state and local leaders were derelict in their duty in many respects. So that's something that has to be factored in. I think there should probably be conditions on that date. That's my personal view. We'll see what the consensus is. I haven't had a chance to socialize that with any of the members over the weekend because we've all been very busy, but it'll be part of the discussion for sure.
What about the debt limit increase? What about tying the debt limit increase to it?
There's some discussion about that, but we'll see where it goes.
This is absolutely unacceptable. Like, I feel like if we had a normal and competent government, and if we had a normal and competent population, they would look at someone like this and they would punish them. They would be like, this person is never going to be reelected ever again. The party would suffer consequences, penalties for behaving like this. But Americans are so polarized and so primed into hyper-focusing on DEI and random nonsensical bullshit that they just don't even understand what this demon is saying here. California sends billions more to the federal treasury than it gets back in taxes. Cal exit now. Yeah, it doesn't work that way. I mean, obviously it's not going to happen, but is this after Hurricane Sandy 2? A representative from Louisiana does this after a state has received multiple necessary bailouts. Yeah, Felix also had some words on this. An opposition party that had an ounce of integrity would possibly be able to make an issue over the speaker putting more conditions on aid to America suffering from a horrific calamity than he ever would for Israel. Globally, can you point out to a single competent government that works on behalf of public interest and not their own power? I can. You're just not going to like the answer that I'm going to give you, so I'm just not going to give you an answer on that question because it is endlessly frustrating. There are plenty of governments that actually try to do their very best with the limited resources that they have or the expansive resources that they have. As a matter of fact, I'll even give you examples from Western neoliberal capitalist governments as well. There are plenty of countries in, at least historically, in Western Europe that have taken adequate measures to harden their infrastructure in the aftermath of times of crisis like this. But of course, the immediate answers that come to mind would be China, even Mexico, especially if you want to look at a case that is so close and has limited resources. Now, they don't get everything right, but it does not matter. I would go so far as to say that most of the OECD nations, Cuba is another example, most OECD nations actually do a better job with this than the United States of America does. Like, we are at the tippy top of capitalism supercharged. We are the most hyper-capitalist country on the planet. Yeah, Western Europe isn't the best example. No, I think it's a great example. And the reason why I use Western Europe as an example for this is specifically because when they have issues, when they have a major crisis, they actually work to solve said major crisis rather than continue the same conditions and even, dare I say, accelerate. The example I want to use is not even one of natural disaster, but something that's near and dear to the hearts of Americans, which is gun violence. Okay? The reason why I use Western Europe as an example is specifically because of the nature, the closeness they have to American politics. And while capitalist, corporatist interests have also completely gutted their institutions as well, at least historically, when you look to places like the Netherlands, for example, I mean, that's a great example of like hardening your infrastructure to mitigate climate change back collapse. You look at places like, or if you want to talk about gun control specifically, you look at places like Australia, right? Like there are people that take initiative in the aftermath of crisis like this, and instead of playing political games, they go, all right, we have to rebuild. We have to do something to make sure that this doesn't happen ever again. What we previously wrote about and talked about and considered as far as like applying the shock doctrine, right, to territories that America controls, that we exploit, such as Puerto Rico, we do to ourselves in mainland United States as well. Because as profit rates decline, corporate actors will always look to squeeze out what remains of said profits from anywhere and everywhere they can. And yeah, aside from the endless exploitation of the global south, there is always going to be some room for further exploitation, even in mainland United States. Yes, I'm giving a shout out to Naomi Klein, the author of the famous book that I'm referencing, Shock Doctrine. Not to be mistaken with Naomi Wolf, the crazy conspiracy theorist, the crazy COVID conspiracy theorist. I think the shock doctrine no longer simply applies to America's foreign adversary and America's foreign allies, even, that they want to steal resources from, but instead to mainland United States as well. Naomi, of course, featured the impact of the Katrina disaster in her book as well. Having said that, I think that there are more and more cases of opportunists taking advantage of crisis like this to further accelerate the public-private partnership and take advantage of crisis like. All right. Wait, where did the initial... Oh, here it is. Have you had packs of coyotes running through your hood yet? No.
In today's Health Watch, the growing concerns about air quality in Southern California as those fires continue to burn. Health officials are warning about the risks posed by smoke, especially in older adults, in children, and in people with respiratory issues, pregnant women as well. CBS News Chief Medical Correspondent Dr. John LaPook joins us now. Dr. LaPook, you reached out to me when I was in the field. All of our correspondents, you really care about this issue.
Yeah.
How can people protect themselves?
Well, first of all, the California Department of Public Health has some great information. Think about indoors and outdoors. Indoors, close the doors, close the windows. If you have an air conditioner, set it so it's on recirculate, so you're not sucking in the air from the outside that may be full of dust. And then if you have an air filter, air purifier, use that. If you don't, there are do-it-yourself ones with a box fan and filters for less than $100 that you can make. Outdoors, the first thing you want to do is, what's the air quality? So go to airnow.gov.
Okay.
Put in your zip code or the name of your town. If the air quality index, the AQI you've been hearing about, is 50 or less, it's considered safe. Higher, the worse.
Oh.
Then minimize your activity, because you do a lot of activity, you're sucking in more air. You know that as an athlete. And then consider wearing a mask.
What's the best mask? We saw a variety of masks on the reporters covering the story.
So one of the things I love about this job is you learn. I spoke to Joe Allen, who's an air quality expert at Harvard, and I learned something new, which is the N95 mask, the KN95 mask that we know from the pandemic, right? They're considered respirators. They filter out the particulate matter, but they are not good at filtering out the noxious gases. So for that, you need a different type of respirator, like the P100 Plus gas and vapor, and that filters out. Those are the ones with the little canisters on either side, and they can filter out those gases. But to be clear, okay, I don't want everybody thinking they need to have that. Those are for people who are close to the smoke, they can't get away, rapid responders scrambling around, and very important, the public health officials and the manufacturers who make these respirators say, it can make it harder to breathe in. So if you have heart, lung, or other medical conditions, check with your health professional, and ideally you want to have a good fit.
Got about 30 seconds. What makes this wildfire smoke so dangerous?
You know, it's tiny little particulate matters that go into your mouth, down your breathing, all the pipes, all the way down to those tiny little air sacs, the alveoli. That's how the oxygen gets into your body. So it interferes with that. You can have wheezing, all sorts of problems. We know from 9/11, all sorts of problems from sucking in what turned out to be those buildings that were.
Yeah, I mean, you're inhaling toxic fumes
Authorities-
of building matter, many chemical substances. Authorities warn of looting and scams in the wake of California
Are warning
wildfires.
looters looking to take advantage of the disaster, they will be prosecuted. But we're also seeing so many people come together to help and lift each other up. Kana Whitworth is at Santa Anita Park with more on that. Good morning to you, Kana.
Yeah, Robin, good morning. Look, that support is on full display here. This is the parking lot. It is completely covered with donations here. This has been a community-run grassroots effort to help people in need. And to give you an idea of the scope of this, a lot of people lost everything that they had, and everyone that they know lost everything that they had. So this is a way that the community is just trying to get them the necessities. This morning, the Los Angeles County Sheriff with an urgent warning to people who are taking advantage of a desperate situation.
Don't do it. Whether it is burglary, looting, or any other crime, whether it's a scam of some kind that you're conjuring up to make money off of the poor people that have been involved in this.
Officials warning burglars, looters, and scammers that they will be prosecuted if they take advantage of people who've been through this tragedy. A curfew order has been established from dusk till dawn in the affected fire zones to protect homes. Authorities increasing patrols and deploying the National Guard to assist. One suspect arrested after they were caught burglarizing a home in Malibu, disguised as a firefighter. The FBI now investigating the drone that collided with the Super Scooper aircraft while it was delivering desperately needed water to the Palisades fire. It will be back in operation today after this hole was punctured in it. Officials warning the public not to fly drones.
This is extremely illegal and extremely...
All right, half of the videos so far have been dedicated to the, a good part of it is dedicated to the community rebuilding and the efforts to help one another. There's been one guy that portrayed himself as a firefighter to engage in looting inside of Malibu, which is psychotic. Okay. There's a total of, I believe at this point, 29 arrests that have occurred where they were arrested under suspicion of looting. Not every single one of those guys were, interested in looting. Most likely. Don't know how many of them have been released so far, how many of them are being prosecuted. But having said that, once again, I will repeat that Los Angeles County, the greater Los Angeles area, is 18 million, almost 19 million people. Okay? Yeah, there are people who will probably get arrested for curfew violations as well, and not necessarily for looting. But let's see how much they talk about the scams and what the nature of these scams are, especially considering that, as I've repeated time and time again, the real looting begins when the insurance company denies your claims. The real looting begins when private equity comes in and tries to purchase your lot that is burned into ashes for a very comfortable price point, much lower than the actual market value. The real looting begins when corporate landlords decide to engage in the act of price gouging, the illegal act of price gouging. This is what I try to reiterate. This is not a defense of a opportunistic charlatan who is so desperate in terms of his own material conditions that he is deciding to engage in a crisis opportunity to make money for themselves by going into a Malibu mansion that hasn't been burned into the ground and try to steal a television. Okay? The price point of such things is so marginal and so inconsequential when you compare it to the real looting, the legalized version of said looting. Look, see, this is what I mean. Look. So you defending looting, they should loot your rich crib. Just example, at HasanAbi, wish no harm. I'm not defending this. This is an indefensible act. Everybody understands that this is an indefensible act. But if you have smoke for this person, okay, then you should understand that the ginormous amount of looting that has already taken place through the legal structure is something you should pay attention to. And it's weirdly enough not something that the media covers or pays attention to all that much. Okay, it's indefensible. Sometimes looting is necessary in some situations. No, like, come on, dude. Going into a neighborhood that has been charred and want peace, Jesus is king. Okay, the brain capacity of people who go, oh, you're defending looting. I'm not. I'm actually telling you that looting is indefensible while simultaneously telling you why mainstream media doesn't pay attention to the real, ginormously consequential looting that happens under the watchful eye of the legal structure, especially if it's done for profit. It's easy to go after small fish, a lot harder when it's a whale. No, I think there's a more nefarious purpose behind that, because we are so conditioned into expecting corporations to behave at the behest of profit that all of that stuff is completely legal. Even when it's technically illegal, like price gouging is illegal. Okay? It's something that people should pay attention to and wonder why. It's something that people should pay close attention to and wonder why the media doesn't actually prime you in that direction and consistently reshifts your attention over to the indie, making it seem like it's a far larger problem. Because out of the 12,000 structures that burned down, many of the people that owned those houses are going to be impacted by significantly larger sums of money. Okay? I'll give you an example. I will give you an example. A looter goes into a random home in a neighborhood that is burned down to steal jewelry. This is a completely unacceptable and gross act. Okay? That person is capable of, let's say, stealing upwards of $100,000 worth of jewelry. In the most extreme example that I can give you, in the most extreme hypothetical that I can give you that would favor the argument of like hyper focusing on random looters. Okay? Down the street, there are houses that are burned to the ground. Those houses, let's say, are at least $3 to $5 million. Those lots are purchased by private equity for $500,000, $600,000, $700,000. The penalty in that regard, the theft that took place in that regard, is initially conducted by the insurance company that denies your claims. Let's say they don't give you the price of all of the goods that you lost. They never do. That's how they generate profit. Also, on top of that, they don't give you money to rebuild. Okay, so there's at least a couple $100,000 that was shaved by the insurance company right there. A couple $100,000 that were stolen by the insurance company right there for something that you paid for that you are not going to be able to get. Okay? Then on top of that, because now you're in a dire financial predicament and your house is burned into ashes and you have no confidence that you can rebuild it ever again. Okay? Now you got other opportunists coming in to basically take the land out of your hands. Let's say your house was $3.5 million. They're trying to purchase it at a price point at like $700,000. Now the penalties incurred, the theft that has taken place in one singular home in this neighborhood, the damage done to one singular family in this neighborhood as a direct consequence of this wildfire is in the millions. That's one house. There are 12,000 structures that burn to the ground. And this situation is going to play itself out 12,000 times. The number of the true theft and the real looting that will take place in the aftermath of the rebuilding process that is long, complicated, and obviously litigation will have to take place as well to claw back every single dollar that you technically paid for, is to the tune of billions. So one must ask themselves, okay? One must ask themselves why everyone is so primed into thinking about the one guy that stole, let's say, upwards of $100,000 worth of jewelry, as opposed to the hundreds of billions potentially if not at least in the most conservative estimate, tens of billions of dollars that were stolen from the hundreds of thousands of people that have suffered major emotional and financial loss in the aftermath of this natural disaster. Think about that. Think about where our priorities lie. Think about why mainstream media covers one aspect of the situation a lot more than they cover the other serialized, systematized form of looting. One is considered the normal machinations of the free market. The other is obviously a criminal element. A lot of people look at this, the system that we exist under, and think like, no, this is normal. A lot of people are skeptical of mainstream media narratives. And yet, for some reason, they never exercise that healthy skepticism when it matters, getting duped by mainstream narratives in this regard, because they feed into your reactionary tendencies. Everyone understands that the person who dresses up like a firefighter to go into a house that hasn't been burned down to steal stuff is an evil person, okay? Everybody understands that, but you never consider the faceless, systematized form of looting that takes place that actually damages a far larger chunk of the population with awards that are upwards of tens of billions of dollars. That's the real looting. And yet, that's also not the real looting that you ever hear about. You rarely ever hear about it in comparison to the looting conducted by individuals. That's simply all I'm saying. Ask yourself why. Now, there's another aspect of the looting that I didn't even mention, which is price gouging. In the process of you trying to rebuild your house, you also need a place to live, right? You need a place to live. And the existing supply of housing market went down and the demand went up. Now you got at least 12,000 single family homes, or even more than that, because it's structures. So there's apartment buildings as well. There are tens of thousands of new rental units that are an absolute necessity for survival. People need shelter to exist. People need shelter. They have jobs, right? They have to be in the approximate neighborhood of where they used to live. And here it is. Despite the fact that there is a law against price gouging, prices have spiked on some LA rentals as fire victims search for places to stay. Some rental listings have shot up above the allowable 10% overnight. I've seen increases of 100%, chat. 100%. And people look to this and go, well, that's normal market conditions. No, it's not. You can say that about price gouging across the board, always. Smaller landlords tend to do stuff like this because they don't know the laws. Okay, first of all, if you think that this is just smaller landlords doing stuff like this, let me tell you, okay, you're wrong. Also, ignorance to the law does not change the dynamic of doing something that is, one, morally repugnant, and two, illegal. Is there even a mechanism of enforcement of this type of price gouging? Yes, there is. You can report price gougers to the prosecutor's office, I believe. But here's the other side of the story. If the media was consistently focusing on this, the real looting that is occurring, with a dollar value significantly higher than whatever a singular looter could potentially steal from a house, and if you had a competent district attorney that actually cared about defending victims of a natural disaster, then they would get the word out. And this wouldn't be relegated to TikTok and random people trying to engage in grassroots initiatives to try and report people to their local prosecutor's office. That's it. It's crazy that because the system is so broken that it genuinely requires people to take matters in their own hands. Here's an example of such.
Hi everyone, tutorial on how to find and report predatory Los Angeles landlords who are victims and jacking up their prices. Anyone can do this. You don't need to live in the Los Angeles area. All you have to do is go to one of the rental websites like Zillow or Trulia and scroll through listings in the Los Angeles area and look for rental history. My dog wanted me to check this listing out, so I scrolled down to the bottom to look at the rental history, and oh look, this listing was increased by $2,500 a month on the second day of the devastating fire.
How much you want to bet they'll pressure Zillow and Altrulia to no longer show previous rental history numbers or something? It's probably not going to work, obviously. But if I'm in charge of big landlord, that is what I would try to do to try and hide this crime in an effort to combat against this kind of, mass reporting.
That is a price gouge. They are obviously trying to take advantage of people who have lost their homes and need a place to stay. This is my spreadsheet that I'm keeping track of everything. And yeah, anything more than 10% is illegal. So unfortunately for them, we will be reporting them to the Attorney General's office. And they could face fines and jail time. So we will be reporting them. There's a form that you can fill out. And yeah, happy hunting. Honestly, these people are predatory, and
who the F can afford this, bro? 7K? Brother, 7K is actually a 56% increase, which is above the legal limit, like significantly above the legal limit. But what's really funny about that is that 7K is nothing. There's properties in Los Angeles that were $15,000 under quote unquote normal market conditions. And now they're going for $30,000 a month. Markiplier mentioned this problem in his newest video around the 620-ish mark, I believe.
Fundraising for. So this is supporting the LA Fire Department, the California Fire Foundation, the World Central Kitchen, Baby to Baby, and CORE.
What's really funny is I saw someone on my subreddit talking about, like, we really got to get better at sending Hasan links with the adequate time codes. And this chatter straight up did the same thing that everyone was complaining about and just sent me a link of Markiplier's video with the incorrect time code instantly. I can't send the link, but FEMA actually created this atmosphere in Maui after the fires. They were offering something like $11K a month for 2 bedrooms for survivors, and it was pricing out people who were there before the fire. That's probably coming to until Trump fucks it up. No, I'm not going to ban them. I'm not going to ban them. Let's continue.
They should be held accountable.
But it's crazy. Like I said, yet another reason why they want to ban TikTok. But it's interesting to think. It's really sad when you think about it that all of these issues are left to individuals who take matters in their own hands. Like, there's just... A competent government would immediately ensure that there is a rental price freeze. Okay? That's what you would do. You would say, hey, by the way, tough times. Okay? Sorry to all the big landlords and small mom and pop landlords, but you're not allowed to increase your rental prices. That is crazy. Okay? What do you mean? You want to behave like an opportunist? Like, what the hell are you doing? No, you're not allowed to do that. We're doing a price freeze on rent. Okay? That way, the additional FEMA funds and resources that come in to the victims are not being used to price out the existing people that need places to live in as well. I was gonna say using, and then I realized that use would be better, so I said used. Yes, you got me, you children. Oh my God, I can never. There's just nothing I can do. This community will always be led by silly billies.
Extremely dangerous.
But also the best of humanity in Santa Anita Park. Thousands coming together to help those in need.
We are giving away free food.
It all started with a TikTok gaining thousands of views. Jerry Martinez, Juan Diaz, and Jimmy Medina simply...
Our corrupt city attorney, Heidi Feldstein Soto, has been conspicuously absent over the past week.
Wanted to give out food in their community, with their efforts inspiring others, and now turning this racetrack parking lot into a massive donation center.
Recently, we've been having so many donations from all over the state. We have wheelchairs, we have coffee pots, we have blankets, we have clothes, we have essentials, hygiene packs. The support from the community has been really, really, really moving.
It is amazing. Another thing that Alex shared with me is that some people lost so much that when they come here to this donation site, they don't even have a bag or anything to take stuff home with them. So they're trying to figure that out. People are having to make multiple trips out here. They saw thousands out here yesterday, and George, they expect thousands more again today and the coming days as well, George.
I'm sure we're going to see that. Okay, thanks very much.
So what is this assessment? Help explain why we need this and what this means for that homeowner.
You got through the state fire marshal, CAL FIRE, working with county partners, teams of 2 go in. They will go in a property like this. They'll assess and they will photograph, and then they will post online after it's verified. About a 12-hour process, and people can go on a website. They don't have to physically be here to know if their property is damaged, and that will then begin the process for the property owner on insurance and getting us to a point where we can start the rebuild process.
How quickly do you anticipate being able to do that?
Well, as I said, I want all the inspections done within 14 days, every single structure that's been impacted by these fires. So that's
thousands of homes.
Thousands of homes, and so that's the mandate. Whatever resources they need, we said we're going to provide it. And then we're looking right now at debris removal. And you're looking at Herculean effort. I'll give you an example. We were just with the inspectors. They say it's a little different world now today with batteries, not just car batteries, but battery packs, people with solar, those Tesla wall batteries and the like. So the hazmat side of this is made a little bit more complicated, which is fine. We'll work through that.
How soon before this house and that house behind you, how long before you envision this neighborhood?
So on the basis of just moving forward to eliminate as many barriers as possible, the current estimate, and you can come back in 2 weeks, and objectively on the basis of new information, I likely would have a modestly different answer. After stress testing the last 48 hours, we think if we get these contracts up and running, we deal with jurisdictional issues between the cities, many cities, and the county of LA and the state, working with our federal partners hand in glove, that we can move forward within 6 to 9 months, get all that debris removed, all the hazardous materials removed. If we get this first 14 days done, that will start that clock.
You're seeing...
Well, you're telling the debris is gone, and I said we want 9 months is the goal. 9 months to a year. You're looking at the magnitude of this, and with the hazmat side, it has to be done in a way that services the long-term needs. And then obviously you're going to learn from this process. Some of the buildings that are surviving, part of their assessment is why did they survive? In so many cases, it's building materials. It's not having the eaves. You see, this is a miracle, this house survived with the old structure where you can get those embers that would flow right into the attic, and that structure's gone, making sure that you never see new construction like that again.
And then what about insurance? I mean, we know, we live here. Your house is insured, my house is insured.
Yeah, mine's the one I have. My dad's house is under the FAIR plan, the state's plan.
And it's very expensive.
Very expensive, and it's not great coverage.
Right, so what do you tell people?
We tell them that we are not only assessing all of that in real time and have hired an independent group to stress test not just the insurance market, but the utility market in California as well. We had that experience after Camp, led to one of the largest bankruptcies in U.S. history, the largest.
Did my man just dunk on his own state fire insurance, the FAIR plan? Dog, you're the governor. What the hell? I mean, it's true, but it's crazy that he's just like openly recognizing it.
Investor-owned utility, PG&E. From that came a wildfire fund to help stabilize that market. And I say that because we're also mindful of the ongoing investigation as to the cause of this. And part of that cause determination, no one has an understanding fully yet of what caused these fires beyond just hurricane force winds, unprecedented winds, in the driest conditions since the 1850s. As it relates to this dry January here in Southern California. Combination of those two things, but was it a utility line? Who's responsible? Was it ours? All those things are being determined. And so we're just stress testing the worst case scenario. If it was a utility, what does that mean to the utility market? As it relates to insurance, insurers, who are the insurers? We've been making a lot of reforms in our insurance market, and we'll need to make subsequent reforms.
Something that's particularly pressing for this community you're standing in is lack of insurance. A lot of people inherited homes or were working class. What about people who didn't have insurance?
And that's going to be the most difficult and challenging thing. And that's where FEMA comes in. That's where the SBA comes in. That's where the state of California comes in. That's where the federal government comes in. That's where philanthropy comes in. People have lost their lives. They've lost their businesses. They've lost hope. And we've got to restore the hope and then restore their lives and businesses and opportunities.
J.D. Vance was on television today
I didn't see
talking
anything.
about lack of competency on your part.
Okay.
What do you say to? You've heard this almost every single day.
Yeah, I haven't talked to him. Hurricanes that were attached to fires, unprecedented wind experiences, heroic firefighters from all across the United States. We got folks from Texas, we got folks from Wyoming that have been pounding on this, the best next-gen technology. We've got these fire hawks, guys with night vision goggles, pounding these fires 24/7. We've got thousands of National Guard men and women that have been on here. We pre-positioned 120 engines, helicopters, dozers, water tenders. We did that on Sunday, 2 days before this event. So with respect to the future vice president, I didn't hear his remarks, but I would invite him, as I did Donald Trump, to visit with the community, express empathy of the scale of this tragedy, and be here for the American people that happen to reside here in Southern California.
Thank you. Where do you source your chicken? Just wondering, because eating a lot of animal proteins can be harmful if every single day from the wrong places. These are the reasons why I both love and hate Twitch streaming. I don't know where I source my chicken from, man. From Ralph's. That's where I source my chicken from. Anyway, I just realized you guys have got your conservatives, Republicans in charge, and your Lib Dems, Democrats as your opposition. Your whole system is right-leaning. You don't have a Labour Party. I know, but like, look at the UK. The UK has a Labour Party, and it's turning into a Democrat-Republican style structure there as well. Question, is a 10% increase limited to California and only after disasters? Yes. Every state has their own price gouging mechanisms. Anyway, here, we'll watch Markiplier's video as well. And then we'll move on to Biden talking about the there's a brief Elon Musk bit here as well. I just wanted to talk about Elon positively embarrassing himself when the firefighter tells him he's full of shit and then immediately ending the stream. Perfect. Let's take a look.
So, all right, what about water availability? Was water availability? I understand that was like not an issue in Malibu. Is that correct?
Was it water?
Yeah.
So there was water. We have several reservoirs that encinos that we use a lot. Now, just an example, if we have one building burning, we could flow 1,000 gallons a minute on that one building with the hose legs that we put in to stop it. You can imagine 1,000 gallons per house we couldn't do, right? So the amount of water we're flowing, there really is no water system that's going to keep that pace. So we have to bring in water tenders, which are these big tank water tanks that, 2,500, 3,000 gallon trucks, and they'll come in. And that's what we have to do to compensate. So
Incredible aspect ratio from the guy who owns the website that he's filming this video on. Ironically, he's also doing this specifically to cut like right-wing commentary and still failing to do a good job.
So they park out there, do it. P did a great job. They brought in big water trucks for us, and we use them as basically mobile hydrants.
All right.
Right, and then we have our own agency as well that has water tenders.
Okay. My understanding is that like along the, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, in Malibu along the coast there was no shortage of water. In the Palisades there was a shortage of water at a certain point. Or is that not accurate?
Well, we were flowing just an amount of water that the system couldn't overbear. That we're just overbearing, just because of how much water these firefighters were utilizing.
Okay.
How can you think this guy is Adrian Dittman, dude? He can't ask a single normal question without going, Anyway, I mean, both are losers. That's true. And they're losers in the same identical way. Anyway, but yeah, the conversation takes place. He tries to hit him with the, well, what about the waters? What about the waters? And the guy's like, no, we had enough water.
All right. Sounds good.
Has water tenders.
Okay. My understanding is that like along the, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, in Malibu along the coast there was no shortage of water. In the Palisades there was a shortage of water at a certain point. or is that not accurate?
Well, we were flowing just an amount of water that the system couldn't overbear. That we're just overbearing, just because of how much water these firefighters were utilizing.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. All right. Thanks, guys.
All right. I guess there was enough water. USI. I'm glad he found a non-DEI firefighter, though, because I know his audience would not be receptive if it was a DEI firefighter who told him there was enough water. Anyway, let's watch Markiplier.